Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavai Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So there's a wonderful mythological story that tells us that Shiva's wife, Parvati, while bathing, created Ganesha as a pure being just from the mud and the scurf that arose from her body. And then she, making this kind of form like this, she then goes and instructs that nobody interfere with my bathing. So please go to the door or go to the entrance of the bathing hut and make sure that, and the house and so on, the premises, and make sure nobody enters it. And he was given the strict instructions not to allow anyone to enter the house while she had gone for a bath. Well, it so happened, of course, that Shiva was away. He returned home, and he's very thirsty, but he's disallowed, and Ganesha stops him. And an angry Shiva cuts off Ganesha's head, is the long and the short of it. Assuming that Ganesha is an outsider, he never knew that Parvati had created her, and that it was his own son. And of course, when Parvati came to know this, she was very, very distraught. And in order to console her, Shiva ordered his people to go and find a replacement. Get the head of any living being that is sleeping with its head facing north direction. And all the illuminating factors that we call the devas who went around found only an elephant sleeping in that position. Some stories say it was a Airavata, and the elephant's head was sacrificed and brought before Shiva. And then the Lord then put the elephant's head onto Ganesha's body. And in this way, Shiva made Ganesha worthy of worship at the beginning of every puja and made him the Lord of all his followers, all beings. And he said that worship of Ganesha should be in the bright half of the month of Bhadrapada, that is the fourth day. People should undertake activities only after his worship. So that's the story. Now, of course, every culture has an abundance of mythologies, and children should be taught these things. Why? Because there's some profound principles that children don't understand. And so it has to be relayed in story form. Where do we get all our truths in the Vedanta? Exactly from the Vedanta that we call Upanishads. Upanishad, inferring that you can sit near a teacher and you can listen and be saturated with all the nectar that coming from the teacher's lips. The teacher giving you enough freedom to contemplate the wisdom of what is there, to churn the ideas, make sure that they are reasonable and understand, and then go into meditation on it. This is the process. It's called Shravana, Marana, and Nididhyasana, that is listening here to something, hearing it well, then contemplating on it, and then finally meditating on it. Meditation meaning I'll access the deep meaning. Now, all the Upanishads are very abstract because there were teachings like this, and students should really memorize these passages and stanzas because they're written either in poetry or prose. And he can then rote learn this, shuffle the ideas around, understand them. But you see, once they get relayed to a third party, it becomes very difficult to understand. And so for this reason, Vyasa, who writes the Mahabharata, has now made it easy by synthesizing all of it into the Bhagavad Gita. And every chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is called Yoga Shastri, and it's an Upanishad. And so if it didn't agree with the Upanishads, you wouldn't take it. Fortunately, it degrees and enhances all the disparate ideas of the day. But more importantly, makes things very easy to understand in one long philosophical poem. But even that people may not understand. And so we have a classification of texts called Puranas. All stories, even a child can understand the story, but whether they understand the meaning, that's up to the teacher. By the age of 9 or so, it should be explained to them. I often use the example here in Ireland. I ask the people here, so you have children? Yes. Do you tell them that in December there is a bearded fellow coming around giving you gifts called Santa Claus? Or in Ireland they call him Santi. And they all say, yes. Did you lie? Did you lie to your children? And many will say, yes, we did. And I said, no. Because at the age of reasoning, you say, Santa Claus exists, but you thought he was a person. No, he's the spirit of generosity and giving. So we never deny something. In Swami Vivekananda's language, or his expression, we never go from error to truth, we go from truth to higher truth. We don't destroy the old things. This is the great difference between the ancient Indian culture and the ancient Greek culture. In Greece, and also cultures derived from that, a whole pantheon of deities is there. And people like Socrates were accused of heresy because they sought a philosophy behind it, and it was seen to discourage worship of the gods. But you see, these gods were human gods. In other words, they went about their business just as humans did, and they weren't that much concerned with human life. It was inferior to them. And so you made a huge statue, the bigger the better. The biggest ones got the best prayers. And no national endeavor would ever take place without some kind of sacrifice and prayer to the residing deity, let's say, of the city or the nation. And so casual was it in a sense that even emperors were declared deities. This was a great conflict between the Judeo-Christians and Rome, and also, of course, made the Christians, or labeled the Christians as actually atheists and as unpatriotic, because they were not supporting the national effort that was behind their support of the emperor, for example, as God, as a god, as one of many gods. And naturally, the whole thing died out. Now, India also had a pantheon. And you see that the chief of the gods, Indra, was demoted to be the chief of one small quarter somewhere. And his lieutenant, Vishnu, was promoted. And we no longer worship these other deities. We don't worship Deus. We don't worship. In other words, and religion evolves. And when the religion evolves, it evolves not only to take into account the time that moves on and the relevancy and the contemporary value of what is being taught, but it also is the same river that flows, but the variations will be there. So the secret of the durability of any religion will be to see, is there variation, adaptation, modernization, without losing the essence called the river. So we'll find that this story relates to a well-loved and well-known deity that has the elephant, head of the elephant, pot belly, and so on and so forth. And we call it Ganapati. And this is quite an ancient concept because it is referred to in the Rig Veda mantras. Gananam Ganapatim Avamahe. And another one, Vishu Siddha Ganapati. And the Ganapati that we worship today, of course, and the Ganapati that was referred to in the Rig Veda will probably be strangers to one another because this has evolved. And so the Ganapati concept, although it's there in the Rig Veda, you see, and it comes out, it passes through all the mills of the epics and the Puranas to produce the Ganapati that is familiar to us. Now, what comes first, the story or the principle? The principle comes first. And where does the principle come from? The depths of meditation. And because it's so profound, it is then relayed in story form so that children and simpletons like ourselves, well, like me at least, will be able to understand it better and the symbolism of it. But you have to explain, just as you explain the presence of Santa Claus, you have to explain what is the meaning. And if that step is not met, then we are laboring under the curse of superstition. And so this Rigveda deity, Ganapati, Brahmanaspati, also called Brihaspati and Vachaspati, manifests itself through a vast mass of light. Now, visually, Ganapati or Ganesha or Vineshwara or many other terms are used, is a golden red color. That's not randomly selected. You have to find out why. And there's a battle axe. It's an important weapon of his. You see, without his grace, no religious rite can succeed. He is always in the company of a group. Gana means group. A group of what? A group of singers and dancers. Now, there happens to be, just outside Dublin, something called Victoria's Way, a man dedicated to taking granite, showing a scheme, a kind of sculptural scheme to skilled sculptors. They take this rock and they make the most wonderful images of Ganesha. And you'll see it in a park. And it is contemporary images, introducing an element of Irishness, an element of humor, an element of modern times, and so on. And I'm sure many of you have gone and seen that garden beautifully. Whenever we have visitors in the summer, or whenever the place is open, we take them to that park. What inspires a person to do that? What is so significant about Ganesha? So we have to understand what is the meaning and why this image is selected, why it came out of the depths of meditation. Even if we take the story, we'll see the significance that from the scurf of life, in other words, from all the various compost of life, we can come up with something that is beautiful. A flower doesn't say, I want to remain compost. Nature has its way of developing a seed within smelly material, rotting material, and producing something that is beautiful and beautiful smelling, not at all smelling like the compost that was laid down. What is that transforming inner essence that makes it happen? And so from the scurf of Parvati, who represents the Mother Nature, she creates a sun. Now, in the Sankhya categorization system that all of the Vedanta adopts, they may not adopt the final conclusion of the Sankhya's, but at least they'll adopt the composition of nature and the behavior of nature, largely. And there you'll find some 24 categories. And all the world can be viewed as fragments seeming fragments of one entity. How did it become fragmented? Through the mind. What mind? Cosmic mind. And our local version of it makes fragmentation as well. And so the great, great coordinator, the great, great creative mind that is called Mahat, that is called Buddhi, that we can call cosmic mind, that we call cosmic consciousness, that we can call cosmic Christ, or cosmic Buddha, or cosmic Ramakrishna. This cosmic entity is there, and the Western philosophy, in other words, Neoplatonism, calls it logos or nous. It is that conceptual thing, that word that comes out and manifests itself. And the same is there in the Vedic scriptures, that Brahma, the mythological version of it, it has to manifest, through an energy. And the energy is the first footer, the first seed, the first expression, the first vibration or oscillation, and that comes out as Om. Now, if you look at the figure of Ganesha carefully, and you look at the Devanagari script of Om comprising A, O, these three sound syllables, then you may see in the Om something of a potbelly, something of a tusk, something of an ear, something of an eye. In other words, it is Parvati's son. What is Parvati? Parvati is Prakriti, the whole of nature, deemed as feminine, that bears initial son, and there it is. And then why should it stand in the way of Shiva? Because being a manifesting thing, being a created thing, it is really blocking the highest. The highest principle that we know of is Brahman, and Shiva represents that Brahman. Then what will we do? We'll make sure that the head is sizable and suitable for removing obstacles. Now, in the ancient days, of course, even today, without tractors and earth-moving equipment and so on, the thing that moves obstacles is an elephant. Elephant can be harnessed. And with a mighty trunk, it is able to take a big tree trunk and move it here and move it there. So this being is Vinyeshwara. It is the removal of obstacles. And when we chant Om, Om is a remover of obstacles. But the title of this talk was Obstacles or Challenges. So we have to be quite careful in our construction of our thinking that we don't manifest something that is intrinsically against us. Language such as problems, challenges, and so on creates exactly that, creates struggles. And the so-called normal outlook of man is to view the world as a constant series of struggles with intermittent moments of placid events. Like a person after a hard day's work coming to his domicile and sitting and relaxing like that in a nice easy chair. Well, wonderful, but you see, there's no holiday for that life principle. Who digests your food, who supplies you with the capacity to think, who renews all your cells, sorts out all your so-called problems in dreams, and manifests in this way. And Om is really significant of the threefold nature of consciousness that we experience as the world. The whole of the Mandukya Upanishad, 12 verses of it, with wonderful Karika commentary from Gaudapada, Shankaracharya's grand teacher. And there we see it's all dedicated to this sound symbol Om. And what is the symbolic meaning of the sound? The representing this waking state, Virat, and then representing deep sleep, and the transition from A to sound, that is the dream. Now there's a cosmic version of that. And so the deep sleep is Mother Nature, Prakriti waiting there, waiting in potentia, then manifesting as the first movement, pure sattva, purity, creative energy. And this creative energy then manifests and variegates and combines. And finally we have the world that we interpret as against us and creating for us a misunderstanding that we have to struggle against it and present it as a challenge. Obstacles or challenges? No, we have obstacles. Now, we were talking earlier. So we have with us, without mentioning any names, a great rugby enthusiast. And we gave him the opportunity to tell us, so supposing there were no obstacles, would anybody come to see your game? Supposing you could score much more easily if there were no opposition players. No opposition players, no referee, no goalposts. It's much easier to play like that. And even if you had no skill, you could easily just run and put the ball down. Well, what kind of game is that? Now we have to shift then our philosophical understanding, our approach, our view of the world, that the world is intrinsically not a challenge, not fraught with difficulties. It is not what the news media puts out. There's a different way of thinking it. Supposing we shift our thinking and view it as divine oscillations and waves coming from the cosmic mind that we call the remover of obstacles. Supposing we view it like that and we play the game, understanding it to be a game, we should play it very well with a great deal of positivity, using all the necessary skills that we do in any team sport, such as perseverance, patience because we have to acquire a skill, and the sheer joy of the movement. And so that's a different way of thinking of it. And I always use this example. Supposing now we are all selected for the Olympic team, part of the, and we represent our nation in France next year, where the Olympic Games are being held. And so a whole team of us, everybody here present, we get a letter from the Olympic Committee. We heard that you are very good runners and so on and so forth, and we've selected you for our hurling team. Not for our hurling team, sorry, for our hurdles team. Hurdles. Hurling is a different game. But hurdling anyway. Hurling and hurdling. This is hurdling. Hurdling, as you may know, you have to run. You have to run fast but strategically. You have to train in such a way and be flexible enough that you extend your leg straight, tuck your other leg in, and make sure that your ankle, your foot, doesn't knock the hurdle over. And off you run. If you knock it down, it'll stop you, it'll inhibit you, it'll slow you down. It'll act like a kind of brake. And you may damage yourself also. And then each one of us replies in writing to the Olympic Committee. We actually make a communal letter. We all agree to sign it. We accept gratefully your invitation on one condition. What is that? That please remove all the hurdles. Well, what kind of sport will that be? The whole essence of the sport is to jump over the hurdles. And so these are obstacles, but they're not challenges. They're not struggles. They're not problems. The other thing is, of course, that we are supremely equipped. And we can always take comfort from resorting to cosmic mind. That is Ganesha, the Lord of all creatures, Vigneshwara, the remover of obstacles. And for this reason, Ganesha in Hinduism is worshipped before everything else. Please remove the obstacles to our sacrifice, our puja, our ceremony. Please remove the obstacles in our business for today. And so we are imbued with the skills of knowing how to get around obstacles. That means we don't complain. There's this saying, don't curse the dark, light a match or light a candle. It's better to light a candle than to curse the dark. So we are fully equipped to get round, and instead of bringing up all our complaints, all our negative victim language, poor me, we can say, what a glory, and move on with great strength, great courage, great perseverance, great energy, and great joy, taking this as a game of obstacles. A person who has that sporting attitude will make a prayer, as I often say. At the end of the day, they may say, I have one complaint, Lord. You never gave me any unexpected curveballs today. It was a little dull. Can you please give me some curveballs tomorrow? Not many people will ask for that. They'll say, oh, please relieve me from my troubles. It'll be a kind of petitional prayer that says, oh, please don't cause me any trouble or inconvenience. But life is not like that. Now, where do obstacles come from? There are three sources. Obstacles can come from our own thinking. As soon as we dispatch a thought, it acts as a seed and grows a tree that we call our samsara, our life, our experience. Be careful what you think. Life is a wish-fulfilling tree. That wish-fulfilling tree itself is called cosmic mind. And so, as we think, it naturally dispenses it. It's a kind of celestial cosmic Amazon. You place your order. The problem is we don't consciously do it very often because we have a habit level that produces useless thinking for ourselves. We have to change the conscious mind systematically, progressively, in order to create a new habit level, a new refreshed way of looking at things, a positivity that is always joyful and is able to spread its joy and its glory everywhere. What use is speech if it doesn't leave some pleasant scent for somebody else? What use is a flower if you can't smell the scent or observe its beauty? What use are we if we don't share the joy that we have from a shifted way of thinking? So we ourselves, by reforming our way of thinking, what we are doing is we are using the cosmic mind, as it were, in order to change our so-called external reality. Second cause of obstacles will be others. There will be many others, but you see, it relates to the first thing. I often hear people say, oh, I'm in an environment and there's bad energy and so on. Well, why don't you have good energy? Why don't you beam from there? And why don't they then complain and say, oh, I tried to be negative, but I was sitting next to a person and all I felt was joy and sunshine. I wanted to frown. They wanted to smile. The smile was much more infectious. The third source will be life itself. Life is supposed to be rough, because what kind of game will it be if there is no opposition player, if there are no goals, if there are no skills required to play? You see, there are supposed to be obstacles, because that's the game of life. We have to learn the game of life and how to play it. This is why I always recommend, as a foundation book, a very simple book from about 1938, Game of Life and How to Play It, by Florence Scovel Shin. So coming back now to the removal of obstacles and what that means to us. More. We mentioned that the most common, the accepted form of Ganapati depicts him as red in color and in the human body with an elephant's head. And out of the two tusks, one is broken. He has 4 arms. 2 of the arms hold a noose, pasha. I also mentioned the axe, the ankusha, the goad, and the other 2. One hand is always held in abhaya, that is assurance. There's no need to fear anything. And then Varudha Mudra. The belly is of generous proportions, is decorated with a snake belt. And there is also the Yajnopavita, the sacred Brahmanical thread, and either of the thread or of a serpent. And he may be seated in Padmasana, or even just one leg up, and maybe one leg up because the belly doesn't permit such a posture. And the trunk may be turned to the left or maybe to the right. And he's always helping himself to liberal quantities of modaka, kind of sweetmeat. And then all of the deities are depicted as having a vahana, a vehicle. And his is a ridiculously small creature, a small mouse. And the mouse is nibbling at its share of sweets, hoping perhaps to gain enough strength to carry his master. It's very heavy, very comical scene. There may be a third eye, sometimes added onto the forehead, the center of the eyebrows. And the number of heads, well, 1, but it could go up to 5. And so arms. Now people ask, why so many arms? Well, how many arms does the government have? Well, it has a military arm, it has a finance arm, it has a home affairs arm, it has a defense arm, and so it goes on. Now, Gana itself means really a category. So everything that we perceive through our senses or grasp through our mind can be expressed in terms of a kind of category. And the principle from which all these categories and all these variations of people, places, and events are all manifested themselves from this Ganapati, who is the Lord of Gana, Lord of categories. Ishwara, Gana, Ganeshwara, Ganesha, Ganapati or Pati, the Lord of all creatures. So in effect, it means the origin of the whole of creation, God himself. Not just a curious character. Well, then why should there be all these characteristics? Well, if we look at the Sanskrit, the word Gaja, Gajanana or Gajamukha, or elephant face for Ganapati, but the word Gaja also has a deeper connotation because Ga indicates the final goal, Gati, towards which the entire creation is moving. It's moving there knowingly or unknowingly. And Ja stands for Janma, birth or origin. So Gaja signifies the Supreme Being, that is God, from whom the worlds have come out and towards whom they are progressing. I often say to the children, repeat, life is a journey, we are the traveler, we come from God and we go to God. Now, another factor we can observe in creation is its twofold manifestation, Sukshmanda, that is the microcosm, and then Brahmanda, which is the macrocosm. And each one is a replica of the other. This we take as a great axiom. We can say that it is a general kind of relativity. We apply something here and it applies everywhere. We take it for granted. So they are really one in two aspects, or two in one. And so the elephant head stands for the macrocosm. Apart from being the thing that removes obstacles like an elephant does. And so the human body represents the microcosm. And the two of them form one unit. And since the macrocosm is the goal of the microcosm, then the elephant part has been given greater prominence by making it the head. And the first thing we notice is the head. But perhaps the boldest statement that concerns the philosophical truths ever made is contained in a certain petit saying, which by now I'm sure we're all familiar with from the Chandogya Upanishad, Tattvamasi, that thou art. And simply means that you, the apparently limited individual, are actually in essence the cosmic truth, the absolute. The elephant form, or the human form of this, is the iconographical representation of this great Vedantic dictum, Tattvamasi, thou art that. So actually you may say that the elephant stands for the cosmic, whereas the human stands for the individual, and the single image reflects their mutual identity. And among the various myths that deal with Ganapati's origin, the one which we told at the very start seems to be the most widely known, because there are other mythological stories about his origin and so on and so forth. But of course, as I said, one of the epithets by which Ganapati is well known and worshipped is this Vigneshwara, or Vignaraja, Lord of Obstacles. Now, Lord of Obstacles means he'll put obstacles in your way also. Why not make the game fun, but also remove them, and remove them when we appeal to that cosmic mind, to that removal of obstacles. So he's the Lord of all that obstructs or restricts or hinders or prevents us, but also with various grades and shades of the powers of obstruction under his control, he can create a hell for us, a great trouble for us if he wants. But in fact, you see, according to the mythological accounts, the very purpose of his creation is to obstruct the progress in the path of perfection. Yes, an elephant can stand in the way. Now, Indian elephants and African elephants are different. The African elephant is much bigger, its ears are bigger, and sometimes you come across a rogue elephant. And elephants, if they don't like you, that means they see you as an obstacle themselves, trying to encroach on their territory. They will mock charge you. The first indication is they will flap their wings, their ears, which look like wings, and they will charge you and stop at the last moment. Well, you'd be well advised to get out of the way. And an angry elephant is a dangerous elephant. And so the elephant can stop you on a path. But you see, that's not the whole of it. The one that puts the obstacle in the way is also the one that can remove it. So, how does he remove it? If he's not appeased by proper worship or undertakings, that is, aligning your attention to this cosmic mind, whether sacred or whether secular, it doesn't matter. They will meet with so many obstacles, they'll simply peter out. So it's to show that nothing can succeed without divine grace flowing. And it is divine grace that easily removes an obstacle. It is very unfortunate in Libya, such a tragedy, so many lives lost because of the unpredictable nature. And so a big storm, a big flood. This is the power of nature. I remember one humorous incident. A man parked a car on a slope and forgot that the handbrake was not reliable, and at the bottom of the slope was a river and was a weir wall, and everybody watched progressively the car just sliding eventually, and the man instinctively ran out of it and caught the bumper, thinking that he single-handedly stopped the car. He won't do it. And then the car slipped down and precariously found itself balanced on the rear wall, as if it was deciding, will I go this way, will I go this way? Eventually it went into the water. because they managed to rescue it, no doubt. So this is nature. Nature is extremely powerful and we cannot hold it back. We have to take advantage of it. We have to make ourselves an open channel for the flood of grace to come through. And if it's done wonderfully, correctly, attuning our minds to the omnipresent, the omniscient, the omnipotent, aligning ourselves to the source of love and life and light, then all the obstacles get removed. Divine grace will flow through and remove it for us, doing the lion's share for us. Our part is very small. So if he's pleased by worship, put it that way, and service, then he'll tempt his votaries with success and prosperity also, because that is also an obstacle. Siti, Riti, these are the various female attendants there. The very taste can lead them away from the spiritual path. And what is the spiritual path? It is to ultimately freedom. So you can make a test for us. Now you see, when compared to the highest spiritual wisdom, the real worth and the really worth striving for, even Riddhi and Siddhi, success and prosperity is what they represent. These are actually like impurities. And since Ganapati's consorts are these two things, personifications of the powers of success, prosperity, most people want to be successful, most people want to be prosperous. Then he, their spouse, has been described as created out of Parvati's bodily scurf from the body, scraped off. And so Shiva, in this mythological story, represents Param Purusha, the Supreme Person. Parvati stands for Param Prakriti, that is the Supreme Nature, considered as his power. There's no separation. There's like fire and its power to burn and water and its wetness. There is the Supreme and his power. The two are inseparable. And so Maya Prakriti, if you want to use the language of philosophy. And we know that these comprise these three evolutionary forces, gunas, binding forces, sattva, rajas, and tamas. And sattva is stated to be pure, and compared to it, rajas and tamas are really impure. And since creation is impossible out of pure sattva, you have to have rajas and you have to have tamas. And even as pure gold doesn't lend itself to be shaped into ornaments unless it's mixed with baser metals, because gold is far too soft. It has to be mixed with certain alloys, let's say nickel or zinc or lead or silver, or maybe all of them. And then you have something that is gold, but something that is also durable. Measure it in carats. Not carats you eat, but 24 karat gold, I think, is purest. Even that will contain some elements of alloy also. So it has to be mixed. Sattva has to be mixed with rajas and tamas in order to be effective. And we, in our own life, we also have to have that. We cannot have 100% sattva. So what is our salvation? A minimum requirement, 51% sattva and 49% other things, and let that grow. So we find the import now of the story with Mother Parvati shaping Ganapati. Now let us see. If you see the image, the ears are large enough to listen to the supplications of everyone. Now, by contemplating this, it becomes a meditation. By gazing on the figure of Ganesha, we can now see why is this here, why is that here, and why is he holding this, and why is he holding that. The ears are large, so he can listen to the supplications of everyone. But like the winning basket, capable of sifting what's good for the supplicant from what is not. And then out of the two tusks, the one that is whole stands for the truth, and the one without a second. And the broken tusk, which is imperfect, stands for the manifest world. This appears to be imperfect because of the inherent incongruities, another source of our obstacles. But the manifest universe and the unmanifest unity are both attributes of the same absolute. And so the bent trunk is also a representation of Om, what is called Omkara or Pranava, the Om sound symbol. That's the symbol of Brahman. It's the symbol of the absolute. It's the symbol of the first vibration. It is the Vak, it is the first word, it is the word that becomes flesh and dwells amongst us. It is the Logos, it is the Nous. And so Brahma issues Vak, word. This word comes to us in modern times as Saraswati. Saraswati, you'll see, carrying the Veena, as well as books of learning, as well as japa beads, all of these things dressed in white for purity, sattva. So, Ganapati is actually Brahman itself. And the large belly indicates that all the created worlds are contained in him, and prosperity also is contained in him, abundance is also contained in him. The Pasha or the noose stands for attachment, raga. The angusha, the goad, how you control an elephant, for anger. And like the noose, attachment binds us and anger hurts us, just like the goad. And if the Supreme is displeased with us, then our attachments and our anger will increase, and that makes us miserable. So the only way of escaping from the tyranny of these is to take refuge in the divine. Or God. You see, there's a difficulty some people have with the word God, but I don't have any difficulty with it, so I can use these as alternate terms. Or it can mean that it's far safer for us to surrender our attachment and anger to Him. Why not? And when they are in His hands, then and only then are we safe. So He's mounted on the small mount because the mouse represents subtlety. And all of these things have the double meaning, either positive or negative. The mind is very subtle and has to be employed in all its subtlety and is a vehicle just as much as a vehicle toward bad fortune, because a mouse can also get into small places and eat all the grain. It can either be destructive or constructive, and it depends on us and how we direct it. So these are some thoughts on this Ganapati, and the reason why we are talking about it today, of course, is because it is Ganesha Chaturthi. It is the annual celebration of this wonderful, wonderful, iconic concept worthy of meditation that we call Ganesha, Vigneshwara, and so many other epithets are there. So we have a few moments. We have something like 5 minutes left. And so I can invite some questions and some discussion around that. So, because I wanted to make this more interactive.
If Shiva is divine and was committed to all creation and everybody who lives in creation, how could he cut off his own son's head?
Yeah, but this is the thing about a story.
It's not true.
So, well, of course, no, it's a myth, but what does it represent? Okay. So it represents the idea that, well, you see, you have to create a symbol that will represent the Lord of all creatures. And that symbol would be the elephant that removes all obstacles. So some story has to be constructed how the elephant head. It's not the only mythological story, by the way, with regards to it. There are others as well.
How Ganesh came about.
Yes. For example, some other variations of these stories. At the request of the deities, who wanted a deity capable of removing all obstacles from their path of action and fulfillment, Shiva himself was born of the womb of Parvati as Gajanana. In other words, Ganesha is Shiva is manifesting as Ganesha. This is one story. Another story goes like this. Once Parvati, just for fun, prepared an image of a child with an elephant's head, and out of the unguents smeared over her body and threw it into the river Ganga, a variation on the first one I told you. It came to life. Both Ganga, the guardian deity of the river, and Parvati addressed the boy as their child. Hence he is known as Dvaimatra, one who has two mothers. Then, of course, there is the story that I told you. And then another one is that he sprang from Shiva's countenance, which represents the principle of Akasha, a kind of area of fields. His captivating splendor made Parvati react angrily and curse him, resulting in his uncouth form. And another story will go that Ganesha was originally Krishna himself in the human form. And when Shani, the malevolent planet spirit, gazed at him, then his head got separated and flew to Goloka, Vishnu's place, the world of Krishna, and the head of an elephant was subsequently grafted on the body of the child. You see, you have to find some explanation why the head is there. Mythology will find it. But all mythology is doing is it's giving some justification for the iconography which is there, but that comes out of the depths of meditation. It doesn't come from the myth. The myth comes to explain the iconography. And the iconography represents the meditation, so that when we look at it, we can now do a kind of reversal of its development and see, okay, so let me see. For example, it is well known, if you observe elephants, be they African or Indian, that they have the most incredibly beautiful eyes and eyelashes. And so Ganesha certainly has that. And of course, the artist makes them more beautiful than the most beautiful. And then we can look at that and see how the Lord is gazing with a mix of love and fun on me. And he's a comical looking character. So we can easily take Ganesha in a light way as well. But you see, the trunk is there, it removes all obstacles. It represents the Omkara. And by chanting Om, or any variation, or our mantra, all mantras really begin from this original vibration called Om. Then you see, we can now have all obstacles removed because we are resorting to cosmic mind itself. In other words, the Lord of the universe, the Lord of all creatures. That's the epithet. And then we can see the tusks, the significance of the tusks as we've described. We can see the significance of the pot belly. We can see the significance of the hand in giving us assurance and the other giving us. And we can see how the sweetmeats that he enjoys represent two things. It's always a double-edged sword. It can represent the greed, if we're not careful, but that whole energy can be diverted. It can represent bliss. So by looking at all of these various symbols, we can then divert our mind inward in a meditative way and reveal what the original seer of these images saw in their meditation. Well, it's now 9 o'clock, so I think we'll leave it there. So, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Thanks.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swami.